Come see us on tour. We're going to be in Baltimore, Hartford, Connecticut, Syracuse, Atlantic City, Levittown, New York, Cohoes, New York, and Providence, Rhode Island. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets. They often say that Trump, the people who vote for Trump, are in a cult. I've heard a lot of people say that. People I respect say that. I meet a lot of Trump voters when I'm on the road, and they're not. From the people I meet are not in a cult. In fact, this proves it, I think. 71% of Trump voters oppose Medicaid cuts. The H-1B1 visa pushback on Trump and Elon also proved that. If you're in a cult, you just take whatever your leader says at face value and you go along. That's not what they're doing. So this is 71% of Trump voters oppose Medicaid cuts. And I think we know which economic bracket the other 29% are actually in. The ones who actually support Medicaid cuts actually live in the, well, I would call them 1%ers, but the economy's doing so good, they're not, it's 29% of them. So most President Trump voters say they oppose any cuts to Medicaid as Republican lawmakers wrestle with how to reach up to $2 trillion in budget cuts through their reconciliation bill. A poll released Monday found the poll from Hart Research conducted for the nonprofit, which advocates in opposition to cuts for the wealthy, found that 71% of voters who backed Trump said cutting Medicaid would be unacceptable. Voters overall were even more opposed to it, 82% saying so. So there's still 18% of the people who don't have a need and understand. 6 in 10 Trump voters also said cutting food and nutrition programs unacceptable. So you know how we had Steve Bannon on, and he said, they got to cut. It's going to be painful. He said that they got to go across the Potomac to the Pentagon. So guess what they're not doing? This budget increases the Pentagon budget by like $100 and some billion over 10 years. So they're not doing that. So right now, everyone's afraid that the Republicans are going to start cutting Medicaid. There's something like 80 million people in the country on Medicaid. Did you know that? There's 330 million people in the country. 80 million, most of those are children, disabled people. Elderly also who are on Medicare also need Medicaid. Isn't that something? Medicaid has increasingly become a hot topic on Capitol Hill as the GOP seeks to advance its budget proposal past the House Rules Committee voted along party lines when they do advance it. The resolution would direct the House Energy and Commerce Committee. That sounds like the Heck Committee. The heck are they doing? The Heck Committee to find at least $880 billion in budget cuts, raising concerns among Democrats and moderate Republicans that it could mean cuts to Medicaid, which provides health care coverage for more than, 70 million people. Most of them poor, and half of them are children. You want to be the kind of country that doesn't give health care to their kids? To their children? Do you want to be that kind of country? That's the kind of stuff you thought that, communists did. Right? That's what people think, The committee has jurisdiction over the program, and many lawmakers believe making cuts to it, along with food assistance programs, is the only way to reduce spending. I have another way. Let me think of it. Oh, yeah, it would be cutting the $1 trillion Pentagon budget. That would be it. Maybe close half of our military bases around the world. What do we need them for? Are we afraid somebody's going to invade us? From the Philippines? Or from Germany? We still have I was in those bases in Germany. They're beautiful. They have hospitals. They have a casino. I know that because the guy I went there with lost all his money. So this is forcing Republicans to take a look at issues that might not have directly affected them before. Once again, pushing Republicans to the left. Great work, Democrats. Great work. Here's Mike Johnson, and here's what he has to say about it.
I challenge you or anybody on your staff, do a word search for Medicaid on the resolution that we passed last night. You will not find it. That is not part of this equation, okay? We're talking about finding efficiencies in every program, but not cutting benefits for people who rightly deserve that. With, work requirements for Medicaid. That is something that is public opinion polls almost 90%. You don't want able...
Okay, this is a big talking point. We don't want able-bodied
workers on a program that is intended, for example, for single mothers with 2 small children.
So a lot of people use Medicaid. This is the irony. A lot of people go on Medicaid when they lose their job, when they get fired or laid off. And so they're sometimes they're offered COBRA. I don't know if you've ever been offered COBRA, but it's the biggest bill that you ever had in your life at a time when you don't have any income. So COBRA is basically a useless program. It's just there so they can say they gave something to the people. So people usually go on Medicaid when they're in between jobs. So having a work requirement, you could see how there would be a problem with that, right? So, okay. So, and are there really able-bodied people on Medicare who haven't just been laid off? Really?
Just trying to make it. That's what Medicaid is for, not for 29-year-old males sitting on their couches playing video games. We're going to...
Hey, by the way, video games are a lot of work, asshole. You can't just walk in there and steal the power crystal. You got dragons. They're shooting blood beams at you from every angle. You inconsiderate effer.
Find those guys, and we're going to send them back to work. That's what everybody supports. That's what the Republicans are for. And by the way, we find dignity in our work. That's going to be good for everybody.
And that's why we're laying off veterans and everybody else in the in the federal government. Anyway, so yeah, everybody's for work. Everybody's for that. But I just explained to you the problem with those kind of work requirements. Here's what Steve Bannon has to say about it.
The Budget Committee is trying to get to, I understand they're going to vote it out tonight. Hey, here's all, I want to know how many cuts, and the same with Steve, they're dealing with the fiscal 2026 budget, fine. Show me the $1 trillion in cuts. I don't want a $2 trillion deficit. I want to see it cut in half. How'd you do it? What they're talking about, the $1.5 trillion over 10 years, that's $150 billion a year. Now, I realize it's maybe taken differently, but it's $150 billion a year. It's not going to work. And to back it up, if you got the CR on the 14th, we got to fund the government going forward, or maybe not. But I don't.
The CR is the continuing resolution. It's what keeps it's what keeps money flowing through the federal government. That's what he means by a CR.
We'll see him shutting down President Trump's government in his first 100 days. It's how can we possibly have a $2 trillion deficit? Where are the Doge cuts? We need them all. They've had enough time to identify at least the waste, fraud, abuse in these different organizations. It doesn't have to be perfect because they'll go through a lot more refinement even after approval. We have to know directionally where we are. And it galls me they're working off Biden's number. I hope it galls the president. I think when the president's fully briefed and fully informed, it'll gall him big league. I think he'll say, what in the hell are we doing here with Biden's numbers? It's an interesting question. I think it's generally confusion and mayhem with Capitol Hill, but hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's some logic here. Maybe they're making some progress on this. But until we see the math, and I mean hundreds of billions of dollars in cuts, hundreds of billions of dollars in cuts, and stop whining about entitlements, get into that discretionary spending, get into the Pentagon, get into Medicaid. Medicaid, you got to be careful because a lot of MAGAs on Medicaid.
I don't know if you heard what he said under his breath. Medicaid, you got to be careful. You got to be careful. Why? Because there's a lot of Trump voters on Medicaid. A lot of them. In fact, 71% of them are opposed to cutting Medicaid.
I'm telling you, if you don't think so, you are dead wrong. Medicaid's going to be a complicated one. Just can't take a Medex to it, although I would love to.
Why?
He'd love to.
Why?
Why would he love to?
Yeah, when
I don't think he believes in, maybe he doesn't believe in government funding healthcare. Maybe that's what, there's a lot of people who are ideologically opposed to that. I'm not one of those people. I think we should have a single payer system and get rid of the parasites and the vampires called the health insurance company. Well, they're really health parasites. because they don't provide a service. They just skim a third of your money you're paying for healthcare off the top. They just skim it. That's how they make their profits. And then the way they even pad their profits even more is they deny you healthcare when you need it. When your doctor says you need it, they just say, nope, because that money goes right in our pocket. They have a financial incentive to deny you treatment. So now if it's a government paying that, the government worker doesn't have a financial incentive to keep you from getting health care. So we all have to pay for health care. I say we all pay into the same pool. It would cost half as much. You know, the rest of the world pays half as much as we do for health care. We pay 100% more for our health care than the rest of the Western world, and we have worse results. Okay. So that's Steve Bannon. And he's saying you got to take, you got to cut, you got to go to the Pentagon, you got to go to entitlements. Hey, if they can find waste, fraud, and abuse, yeah, you know how you can get rid of a lot of the fraud in Medicare? Is you let Medicare negotiate drug prices. Right now, that's how corrupt our government is. Big Pharma got the government, the federal government, to pass a law making it illegal for Medicare to negotiate drug prices with Big Pharma. That's called fascism, when the corporation and the state merge to conspire against the citizen. That's called that's what that is. So that would be, but I don't hear anybody saying that. Why? Because they're bought by Big Pharma. That's why. That's why you got vaccines mandated, because they're all bought by, that's why. Because they're all bought by Big Pharma. So that'd be a real easy way. Right, that's where I would start. And then I would really start at the Pentagon. Isn't it weird that they didn't start at the Pentagon? Isn't that weird? Even though Donald Trump gave lip service to cutting the military budget by 50%. Is anybody even talking about closing some of our 800 By the way, there's more than 800. That's just the ones they tell you about. So there's probably 1,000 military bases around the world. Is anybody talking about cutting those? That's how you know the people who scream the loudest about climate change are full of it too. Because the first place they should start is at the 800 military bases we have around the number one emitter of carbon, if you believe in carbon causing climate change, is the U.S. military. They never do that. That's how I know those people are full of it. So that's where I would go. I would start with the negotiating drug prices. And then I would go to the Pentagon. If they started at the Pentagon and they cut a couple of $100 billion, closed, a couple of 100 military bases around the world, I think people would be more willing to welcome painful cuts in other places. But if this goddamn budget increases the military. It increases the money we're spending on the military. It increases. Do you know how astronomical the amount of money is that we spend on the military compared to every other country, including China and Russia? Before the Ukraine war, China was spending $60 billion a year. We're spending close to $1 trillion. To defend us from what? From what? Nobody's going to attack us. We have nuclear bombs. No one's going to attack us. That's just the corruption that's in your government. Do you understand that? That's how corrupt your government is. And not corrupt a little bit. And it's both parties, Republicans and Democrats. When Trump was president, they increased the military budget $132 billion while Trump was president the first time. That's not just 1 year. That's every year. So over 10 years, that's over $1 trillion. How about we just go back to the 2016 military budget? How about we just do that? Because that would save us over $1 trillion in 10 years. How about that? So this isn't that hard. So it doesn't seem to be that they're serious about cutting the Pentagon military spending. If they were serious about that, I think people would be more willing to take cuts at other places. But where do they go first? They're going after Medicaid? Medicare? Social Security? Is that where they're going first? Really? And what do they do? So, and how much? I want to know how much money have they actually cut from USAID and the NED, and where's that money going? Just like when Biden pulled us out of Afghanistan, Everybody was patting him on the back. I'm like, wait, what's he going to do with that money that we've been spending? Oh, they got another war in the chamber, Ukraine war. That's why the deep state allowed Biden to end the war in Afghanistan, because they had another war they wanted to do even more. That's why. Here's how it went on Fox News when they tried to talk about this.
I think is a positive sign for Democrats, though, is there seems to be a bit of coalescing around a message that is resonating. So Hakeem Jeffries gave a press conference today. He had up 2 signs, and one of them says Elon Musk is making $8 million a day in government contracts. The average Medicaid recipient gets $65 a day. And we know in the new spending bill that Speaker Johnson has put forward and that narrowly passed the House that you're going to why are you, this like, actually you matters.
This was this great new message, and I got bored.
You got bored the second I opened my mouth. No, but it does matter to say that somebody who is running the government in a serious capacity is and supposed to be rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse is making $8 million a day, and they want to cut your Medicaid. And you know how serious the threat is, because Josh Hawley, of all people, is saying that he will not allow that spending bill to go through the Senate. He says 21% of the people who live in his state are on Medicaid.
All right, Greg.
Okay. All right. That's enough.
Whoa.
That's enough. Enough of that. Enough of those facts. We don't want to hear that. We don't want to hear the reality. We want to pretend. Come on, fraud's what makes this country great. Am I wrong? We don't just have fraudsters. We have fraudsters with a high-tech semi-robotic army to defend their bullshit. So, House Republican leaders are downplaying the potential cuts to Medicaid benefits, saying changes to the program would consist of work requirements and reducing fraud, not changes like lowering the federal match for states that have expanded Medicaid. Look, Medicaid has never been on the chopping block. That's what Mike Johnson says. If you eliminate fraud, waste, and abuse in Medicaid, you've got a huge amount of money. Okay, well, how much, what? So let's see. Trump vowed not to touch Medicaid as part of the cuts, but has included a caveat for finding waste or abuse within the program. Okay, I guess we're going to see. Come see us on tour. We're going to be in Baltimore, Hartford, Connecticut, Syracuse, Atlantic City, Levittown, New York, Cohoes, New York, and Providence, Rhode Island. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.